who've been dismembered, who've had a cardiac arrest induced, who've been sucked out of their mother's womb. Because
right to abortion, we can tell you right now that in a 6-3 decision written by Justice Samuel Alito, the court has ruled that states can decide whether abortion should be legal or illegal. That means, according to this decision, according to Justice Alito, the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe versus Wade and Casey have been overruled.
We just have the opinion, Nora. Printing it out now, so we only have the majority. It's a 5-4 opinion. There is a majority written by Justice Alito that says Roe versus Wade is history. That landmark 1973 ruling that said a woman had a constitutional right to abortion now goes back to the states, who can set their own policies on abortion and decide whether or not they want to ban it entirely. Again, it's a 5-4 decision. There are 3 fierce dissents by the liberal justices, which we are printing out now, and we'll be getting through all of this. But based on my quick scan so far, and this is a lengthy opinion, it appears to track somewhat closely. There will be differences to the draft that leaked almost 2 months ago now, that also reflected the court was poised to overturn Roe versus Wade. So we had that signal then, and today we get the final ruling, that 49-year-old landmark ruling that made abortion rights the law of the land, grounded in the Constitution, is overturned.
This is huge, Nora. I mean, almost immediately in 23 states now, this means that access to abortion is severely restricted. There's about 9 states that have codified it, states like New Jersey, states like Connecticut, but this will be a patchwork of differing laws. This kicks off an incredible legal fight, Jan. I know you've been following this. In the states.
In the states.
To test whether those laws on the books reflect the will of their constituents or the political outcome of a very motivated constituency on this issue that is so divisive and so galvanizing on both sides of the aisle.
We cannot overestimate the importance of what is happening today, because for half a century, women have been guaranteed the federal right, a constitutional right to abortion. The Supreme Court saying today that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. It will be left up to the states.
And their legislatures, and therefore the people.
That's right.
Who can decide how they want abortion policy to look in their states.
What is the legal undergirding behind Justice Alito's majority opinion?
Well, Justice Alito, in this majority opinion, joined by those 4 conservatives, essentially says that Roe was wrongly decided from the outset. There is no constitutional provision that mentions abortion, a right to privacy. It is not grounded in the text of the Constitution or in the history of this country, where states, even when the 14th Amendment, which has, of course, that very important liberty protection, was ratified. Shortly after that was ratified in the mid to late 1800s, all states made abortion a crime. So he goes back and looks and says Roe was just wrong. And yes, stare decisis, which means we let the decision stand. That's an important consideration, and that's why the court in 1992 refused to overturn Roe versus Wade. But today the court is saying the court in 92 was wrong, this was wrong when it was decided, and it is our duty to correct it as a matter of constitutional law. Because again, constitutional rulings, judges generally get to decide those. They're not like if you disagree with a law that the Congress passes and Congress can amend it. It's very difficult to pass a constitutional amendment.
Is the fact that Roe versus Wade the direct result of the 3 conservative justices that President Trump put on the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because
this is why elections matter. No matter what side of this issue you are on, the addition under President Trump of 3 conservative justices who oppose abortion rights allowed this to happen.
Absolutely. The opinion was written by Justice Samuel Alito. He was nominated by President George W. Bush. It was joined by Justice Clarence Thomas, nominated by President George H.W. Bush. And the 3 other conservatives who joined that opinion, Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, all 3 nominated by President Trump. You need 5 votes to have a majority. There's another conservative on that court, Chief Justice John Roberts. He did not join this majority. He's written separately saying that he agrees with the outcome, but that suggests he's not willing to go as far as this court. As he suggested in oral argument, and of course remember, this all started in Mississippi.
Right. When
Mississippi passed a 15-week ban on abortion.
I want to dig into the Chief Justice Roberts thing in just a moment, but first I want to go to our Chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett, because he is there at the Supreme Court, and of course the crowds are erupting. The Supreme Court, a fortress. Tell us what you're seeing.
So, Nora, what we need to know is and observe is this landmark opinion, which many Americans, millions of them, will view as a retrenchment of an expected and understood right to access to abortion, has been delivered from within, as you just said, a fortress. The Supreme Court is surrounded on all sides by 2 layers of fencing. The street you see behind me is First Street, in front of the East Capitol of the capital of the United States. There are about 250 protesters, about equally divided on this issue. And immediately after it was clear that the Dobbs decision had been released, there was a roar from those who've long opposed abortion rights. We can see with our camera embedded into the protesters that many of those on the so-called pro-life side are crying, weeping in joy. Those who are on the pro-choice so-called side are angry and anguished. And what is clear from the street protests, again, it's not large in number. There have been larger protests in Washington, to be sure, but they are passionate, they are inflamed, and it is quite clear from within this fortress, this decision will not be the last word on access to abortion at the state level or probably in the United States Congress. Nora?
Major Garrett, thank you. I want to explain what this now means, that there is no longer a federal or constitutional right to an abortion, as Roe versus Wade has been overturned by the Supreme Court. Also, Casey overruled as well. I can show you now. There are 26 states across America that are certain or likely to ban at least some access to abortions. Here they are. 13 of those states have already passed those so-called trigger laws that in some cases ban all abortions, no exceptions for cases of rape, incest, or to protect the life of a mother. There are 16 states with Democratic-controlled state legislatures and the District of Columbia that have raced to pass laws that will protect a woman's right to an abortion. We can show you those states as well. We have a graphic for that. What I'm trying to tell you with the red states, that essentially that it would immediately ban abortion, and these states that have moved to protect abortion rights, we are going to have a patchwork of America. This is a tale of 2 Americas about where you can get abortion in America and where you cannot. It's just seismic, this decision.
And it's going to be seismic in the states, because now the state legislatures are going to get to decide what abortion should look like, abortion rights should look like in their states.
And defining viability.
Right.
And defining when life begins.
Exactly. And so therefore, people in those states are going to have to, if they don't agree with what those 26 states are now about to do, are going to have to mobilize until something may change at the courts, at the federal level.
Jan Crawford is our chief legal correspondent, has covered the Supreme Court for 3 decades. This is one of the most significant reversals of a constitutional right in our court's history, correct?
Right, of course. I mean, the court has many times reverses previous decisions, including constitutional decisions that are wrongly decided. I mean, if you think of Dred Scott and Korematsu and some of those horrific decisions, this has been portrayed as the first time that the court is reversing a decision to take away a right. But to those on the other side, and in this majority opinion, that's the wrong analysis. This is a decision that is extending a right, as they would put it, to the unborn, and that Roe took away. So again, like with everything on abortion, it depends on how you view the underlying issue of what and when life begins.
And it's so, Jan's laying out the legal definitions here. Politically, this has been so divisive and so difficult that this has never been codified at the federal level into law. Even though this is now really seen as a Democrat versus Republican issue, it wasn't. For decades, there were, including the President of the United States, Democrats, people of faith who felt very uncomfortable. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, in fact, only issued issued the word abortion in his speech once since becoming president of the United States. This gets to so many complicated issues. But at the federal level, I asked Speaker Pelosi why, in all these decades, the United States has not codified this. And even she has recognized the shifting political balance here that has not made it possible, even when Democrats held the majority, to codify this into law. So there's no federal protection there. It becomes the state patchwork.
That's an excellent point, and I think that's why it's useful to look back to 1973 when the court decided Roe versus Wade. Abortion was illegal in this country until Colorado passed a law in 1967. That was only, I'm not good at math, but 6 or 7 years before Roe came down. 13 other states followed, and then 4 after that. So in less than half the states, when Roe came down, they'd only just recently started changing abortion laws to give more rights to women in those states. Roe has remained controversial, it was at the time, and even then Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, because the court stepped into this debate too soon and then set nationwide policy that abortion rights would be protected across the country. The states were moving in that direction already. So they jumped in to say, we're going to just shut off that debate. Today, in this opinion, which I'm still getting through, suggests that debate now will go back to the states where it should have always stayed. And then we will see how it evolves.
Listening to Jan, I literally have goosebumps. Yeah. This is such a huge moment. And this will have so many effects that we can't even fully appreciate today. Just looking at the fights that will be happening at the state levels and talking about that defining of viability, front page piece in the Wall Street Journal. What does this mean for in vitro fertilization? People who are seeking as a family to have a child. What does this mean to the embryos that they have frozen in hope to bring life into the world? What does this mean for employers? What does this mean for insurance carriers? The federal government, what do they do now that they have tried to guarantee that there will be access to an abortion pill, even in states where abortion is made illegal?
What about women who serve in the military and get abortion rights or contraceptive rights through their government-provided health care? What happens there?
Well, right now, what the Supreme Court says is what happens if you're, say, a woman in Mississippi or Georgia or any of these states right now that look poised to say abortion is illegal, is that you're going to have to go to your state capitol or go to your ballot box and say, wait a minute, of course we should be able to have IVF. You're going to pass these laws. That's your redress now. It's not going to be at this point at the Supreme Court anymore.
There is so much to talk about. We are going to get through not only the legal impact, the political impact, the economic impact. Let's bring in Kelly Robinson. She is the executive director of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Kelly, what does this ruling mean?
This is devastating. The courts have failed this country. The courts have failed women and pregnant people all over this country. I have to remind you, there is no state in this country where banning abortion is popular. 80% of people are with us on this issue. And the court, this is not the people's court. This is a devastating moment where people are scared, they are afraid, and Planned Parenthood will be here to support them in finding care in any way we possibly can. But this moment is dark and it's devastating.
What does it mean in certain states? How will you see the impact for Planned Parenthood?
The impact is going to be immediate. There are 13 states that will ban abortion immediately. And 26 states over the course of the next couple of months will ban access to abortion care. That's hundreds of thousands of people that will be impacted each year, 15 to 20,000 people per month that we need to make sure are finding access to care a different way. And the problem is we've already seen this play out in places like Texas and Oklahoma that have fundamentally banned access. In those states, we are seeing people have to travel across state lines, travel hundreds of miles. We're seeing them have to find solutions for their healthcare needs outside of the traditional system, or at worst, be forced to carry their pregnancies to term. This is not the America we were promised. This is not the interest of the people.
And we are looking at some of the polling right now by CBS News. Kelly, thank you very much for joining us. Stay with us, if you don't mind, as we continue to pour through these decisions. In terms of that polling that we have from CBS News, Roe versus Wade, keep it as it is. 64% of the country say keep it as it is. 36% say overturn it. The other poll numbers we have, should abortion be generally available? 50% have said yes. 33% saying there should be stricter limits. So the numbers here in terms of breaking down where this country is on this issue, Margaret, those are national polls. But in the states, we're divided. And in most of red America now, abortion is illegal.
That's right. And defining exactly where life begins is also of varying places. In certain states, including Missouri, they're looking at 8 weeks. 8 weeks after which abortion would be made illegal. In others, they're looking farther out, 24 weeks. It's a varying patchwork here, and it will have huge implications, particularly for poor women, for women of color. New York and Illinois had the highest rates of reported abortion in 2019, but those are reported abortions. This is something that is, across the country, across socioeconomic lines, used here. Now, what does this mean in terms of the politics? It's messy. It's complicated. In the state of Michigan, the governor there, Governor Whitmer, is already suing county prosecutors to try to stop them from enforcing the original law from 1931 in Michigan that made abortion illegal with no exception for rape, with no exception for incest. And so this is going to get very tangled as people, I think, slowly start reading in on exactly what their local laws are. Many people have not necessarily tracked what those restrictions are because they knew that the court at the federal level had secured this. And now it's going to be far more complicated. I also, looking at these protesters, Nora, the other thing I want to highlight, the Department of Homeland Security had already warned about political violence in the weeks and months ahead. And we know that the National Abortion Federation found incidents of assault and battery against providers and patients was up 128% in 2021 versus 2020.
And there's also been an increase in violence at some of the pregnancy centers, which, of course, are there to try to talk women out of having abortions. We've seen that in the last several weeks. Planned Parenthood and other groups releasing a statement this morning saying they were condemning all types of violence or threats, again, anticipating that we may see some of that in the wake of this decision. But I'm just getting through, if I could get to some of the...
Yes, and I'll let you talk. Let me just do that. Just to recap, everyone that is just joining us right now, the Supreme Court today has overruled Roe versus Wade, eliminating the constitutional right to an abortion after almost 50 years. This is a decision that will transform American life. It will reshape our nation's politics, and it will lead to almost total bans on abortions in almost half of the states across America. Just let that sink in for a minute about what that means. The big question we are asking today, what does it mean for abortions that are done with pills? Because half of abortions are done with pills. What does that mean? What does it mean for the future of contraceptive rights? What does it mean for the future of those who seek fertility treatments and use things like in vitro fertilization? These are all questions that we are going to try and dive in today.
Well,
and what will it mean?
That.
Okay, great.
I mean, what that means is it's going to be up to the people in the state capitals. So some states are going to try to ban medical abortions. Some states are going to try to prevent women from accessing medical abortions, the pills that might be out of state or out of country. All of those questions now are going to depend on what the state legislatures and the governors decide on in those states. And that's the bottom line. It's not, you can no longer go to the Supreme Court and say, this law is illegal, it's unconstitutional. The court is saying that there is no constitutional right to an abortion. Go to your state legislator and tell him, take it up with him or her. We're out of it. I mean, that's basically what the court has said. And if we want to look, I'm just going again through this opinion, right at the top, and again, it appears to track pretty closely to different language, and it's a few pages longer. But on page 6 of the opinion, here is the essential holding that, I mean, Justice Alito and the majority is saying Roe was an abuse of judicial authority. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences consequences. Far from bringing to end a national settlement of the issue, Roe and Casey, the 92 case we talked about, have inflamed debate and deepened division. It's time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. That is the holding in this case. If you don't agree with the state, if you don't like it, it's in the state legislatures now. The other question people had, though, as a result of this ruling, eliminating a constitutional right to abortion, is what about all these other areas of the law that are grounded in a right to privacy under the liberty component of the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment? There are a lot of cases. Right to contraception, right to same-sex marriage. The court has expanded on that from its original draft that we saw 2 months ago.
Oh, so this is new. So what is in this?
So
this
on
is page 71.
On page 71, the dissenters, of course, say it calls into question all of those cases. The liberals are saying this calls into question same-sex marriage. This calls into question a right to contraceptives because those are grounded, again, in that same underpinnings of the Constitution that Roe versus Wade and subsequently Casey was. The court is much stronger today. They bolstered that part of their decision. We have stated unequivocally that nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. We have explained why that is so. Rights regarding contraception and same-sex relationships are inherently different from the right to abortion because the latter, as we have stressed, as the court is saying, uniquely involves what Roe and Casey termed potential life. It is hard to see how we could be clearer. So the court today is emphasizing this does not impact those cases because abortion is unique. It is unique because of the prospect of fetal life, or as the Mississippi law says, an unborn being.
You're trying to say that they are making the case that this only deals with abortion. Don't read more into it than you should.
Making it, it's as Justice Alito says, it's hard to see how we could be any clearer on this issue. And
however, Justice Thomas has issued a concurring opinion, but on page 117, he has said that he wants to reconsider Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. Explain what that means, what Justice Thomas, though, wants to do.
So here's the Thomas opinion. He's writing separately. He's off on a trip of his own on this, though. He is writing for himself. And remember, how many votes? You need 5 to change the law. And not a single conservative justice is joining him. So that means, unless they change their minds and backtrack on this language that they've written today, there's going to have to be 4 more justices who would support that view. He is the only one saying that those cases also are called into question. No one else joins him. The majority says they're not.
You know, Jan, we talk about rights being taken away or lack of access. There's also that question of what rights can come out of this that Congress potentially could act on.
Great point.
We are putting on women, particularly if you look at just the statistics, poor and black women are the highest recipients of abortions. What tools is the federal government giving them, for example, to stay employed and paid while they carry that baby to term and deliver that baby? There's no federal guaranteed, right to keep getting paid past 6 weeks of paid medical leave in this country.
There is no consensus on abortion in this country, but there is one area of debate that both sides can come together on, and I've been interviewing them for the last several weeks trying to get ready for this, and that is maternal health, access to child care, support for women in the states and at the federal level has to improve. Whether you're in a red state or a blue state, a state legislator or a congressperson, that is an area of the law that now, especially with this decision, has got to improve.
Because we have
to do more.
the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed country in the world. That is stunning.
It is stunning. And on that point, just to clarify, 38% of all women who had abortions were non-Hispanic black, while 33% were non-Hispanic white, 21% were Hispanic, and 7% of other races. 58% of abortions were for women who had never had one before. And this one, 9 out of 10 abortions in the U.S. in 2019 took place by 15 weeks of gestation, which was the original Mississippi law, Dobbs versus Jackson Health. But then when they argued it, they asked for a total reversal of Roe versus Wade.
26 states asked the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. So that gives you some idea of where those 26 states are going to be, and we've already shown you a graphic of that. But I'll make one more point, and again, we'll keep going through this, but the role of the Chief Justice, right? I mean, until we had these 3 recent nominees by President Trump, John Roberts could sometimes move the court. He was considered the swing vote. So if Roberts didn't want to swing for the fences, the conservatives were restrained because he could keep them from, he was the 5th vote. Now his vote does not matter. There are 5 justices who are willing to swing for the fences and go much further than he did. And today, he does not join them on the reasoning and why this court is saying Roe and Casey should be overturned. He agrees that that state law can be upheld, but he doesn't think the court needs to go as far. Now, abortion rights supporters say, what's the difference? If you're going to uphold a 15-week ban, states are just going to try to uphold a 10-week ban and then a 6-week ban. So is it a distinction without a difference? Perhaps.
It's an excellent point. There had been some speculation that Chief Justice Roberts would achieve some sort of what people were calling the Roberts compromise. Would he be able to pull
one? He just needed one.
One, and to just say, no, let's just keep it at 15 weeks. Let's uphold Mississippi, but let's not do something as seismic as overturn Roe versus Wade. Do you think he tried to do that?
Absolutely. But I think that from the start, that was getting no traction. That's a very difficult, it's a 15-week ban is completely inconsistent with Roe versus Wade, which of course prohibits states from restricting abortion before viability. Viability is 24 weeks or so. 15 weeks is pre-viability. It's directly at odds with Roe versus Wade. So how could you write that principled decision? And the justices, the conservative justices, signaled in the oral arguments in early December that they were not going along with that, which is why we thought in December that Roe was going to be overturned, and the only question was whether it was going to be 5-4 overturning Roe or whether it would be 6-3 with Roberts finally agreeing to join the conservatives. He did not.
Just to recap, the Supreme Court has just ruled in this landmark case. It will be taught in schools for decades to come. It will become just as popular as Roe versus Wade for people who can name Supreme Court decisions, because they have just eliminated the constitutional right for an abortion after almost 50 years. This will lead to all but total bans on the procedure in about half of the states in America, most of them red states in America, which have already passed some of these laws or have so-called trigger laws.
And those trigger laws, some of those trigger laws take effect. Abortion is illegal in several states now, right now. They take effect immediately. Others are going to require signature, which we will probably see this afternoon. Then those laws will take effect. There's a handful that'll take 30 days. But right now in states in America, abortion is illegal.
March for Life is an annual rally and march opposing both the practice and legality of abortion. President Jeannie Mancini is with us. And Jeannie, your reaction?
Well, Nora, I can't help but think of the hundreds of thousands every year, the collective millions of pro-life Americans that have marched every single year since Roe v. Wade. And they've marched because they believe that the unborn person is the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, and that abortion is a human rights abuse. And so today, all of those who've marched, I just want to say thank you. And we still have our work cut out for us, of course. You've mentioned that many states will have life protective laws, and we're very grateful about that. And but there are many threats of violence right now against the pro-life movement, against Americans who just very much have the right to believe in this. And we need to increase our support to women and men facing unexpected pregnancies. It's already very strong, but we absolutely need to put our money where our mouth is in that regard.
How will you do that? I mean, as you know, more than half of abortions are carried out for women in their 20s. In many of these states, I'm thinking about Texas in particular, they have rolled back health care coverage for poor women. How will March for Life, how will you pivot to help women in need?
Well, first, the role of the March for Life is to gather pro-life Americans in the public square so that they can testify to the beauty of the unborn child. So that's what we do. But many other organizations will be very involved. For example, you mentioned Texas, and simultaneous to the heartbeat law being passed, there was also a funding stream of $100 million. So let me say that again, $100 million that was passed to provide resources for women in these scenarios. So collectively, when we consider the Pregnancy Resource Center movement, which I would say is the untold story in the pro-life movement, we know that over $270 million of free resources are made available to men and women facing unexpected pregnancies every single year. Now, we need to increase that. I know, for example, of a beautiful church in Gaithersburg, Maryland. You can check it out yourself. It's called St. John Newman, and they have vowed to making sure that every single woman in Gaithersburg, Maryland will have everything that she needs so that she won't ever feel backed into a corner to make the choice of abortion. You know, we've gone from this idea of abortion being safe, legal, and rare to abortion on demand until birth, paid for by your tax dollars. And today's decision takes that away. Essentially, it allows the United States to stop being one of only 7 countries around the entire world that allows late-term abortion. It allows states to be able to limit abortion at 15 weeks and earlier if they so choose. So it really returns it to the people, and I'm grateful.
Jeannie Mancini, the president of March for Life, thank you. Want to bring back in our Jan Crawford, our chief legal correspondent. I know you're still pouring through this decision.
I want to get to some of the dissents. Obviously, and keep in mind kind of where we are, the landscape here. 5 justices. Takes 5 justices to form a majority on the court. That's what we have today. The 5th vote was our newest justice, Amy Coney Barrett, who replaced, of course, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That is decisive,
yeah,
right?
She was a fierce defender of women's rights and women's abortion rights.
And if she were still on the court, or someone who had replaced her who had a liberal perspective, the court would not have overturned Roe or Casey. But we have some powerful dissents from the 3 remaining liberals, all joined Justice Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan. And there is a joint dissent, not written by one with others joining. It's a joint dissent, meaning they all agree with this. And they emphasize throughout the dissent really what they see the court is doing here. And if I could just read from page 2, right at the top. The court's ruling, the liberals say, says that from the very moment of fertilization, a woman has no rights to speak of. A state can force her to bring a pregnancy to term, even at the steepest personal and familial cost. An abortion restriction is permissible. And it then goes on to predict states will feel free to enact all manner of restrictions, saying that we've already seen it, going on to predict that there will be many more to come. And then on page 4, the dissent, the joint dissent says, whatever the exact scope of the coming laws, one result of today's decision is certain: the curtailment of women's rights and of their status as free and equal citizens. Yesterday, the Constitution guaranteed a woman confronted with an unplanned pregnancy could make her own decision. But today, that is no longer.
And that is why I think it was such an important question you asked during that March for Life interview of what tools are being provided to women to go through the very dangerous process of actually delivering a child. That's what the maternal mortality numbers mean. That means it is a risk to your life to carry a child to term, more so in this country than other developed countries in the world. What becomes the policy response at the state and the federal level to that? What becomes the policy response to the children who are born into poverty in these states to women who would have otherwise aborted? Because it puts even more of a burden back on those governments and on those taxpayers to provide potentially. What is our policy response there? I mean, that's kind of where I see another part of this argument going that impacts not just women, but families across the board in this country.
You raised an important point earlier when you said, what could the federal government do, suggesting that perhaps they can pass legislation to give more support for child care, more time off off, enhance maternal health programs. There's also going to be a lot of questions about what President Biden can do. For example, can he do anything through executive order to make medical abortion more available through the mail and have the FDA do something like that?
Let's bring in our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes, because she is with us and can dig in on just that very point. President Biden has talked about these so-called executive orders or actions, but would it really do anything, Nancy?
Well, Nora, it certainly wouldn't make up for abortion being banned in multiple states, but the president is being urged by abortion rights activists to take a series of actions that would make it easier for women who live in states where abortion is banned to go ahead and get an abortion. So, for example, just today, a group of African-American female lawmakers urged him to declare a public health emergency if this ruling were to come down the way that it now has. There are others, as Jan mentioned, who are urging him to drop the last FDA restrictions on the sale of abortion pills. Currently, pharmacies need a special license in order to dispense those pills. There are many Democrats who want him to push the FDA to do away with that. Provide travel vouchers, possibly, for women who need to cross state lines to get an abortion. They want him to look into whether abortions can be provided on federal lands in states that ban abortion. So there's sort of a whole menu there for the president to choose from. The White House has been very quiet about what exactly he will do, though we do expect to hear from him sometime today.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Also want to bring in our chief election and campaign correspondent, Robert Costa. He is on Capitol Hill this morning. And Robert, this is one of the chief legacies for former President Trump. He was successful, along with then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, of appointing a number of judges to the federal benches, and including 3 to the Supreme Court. What do you think happens now with the midterms just less than 6 months away?
That's exactly right, Nora. This moment is the culmination of a conservative project inside the Republican Party to upend the federal judiciary, overhaul it by nominating conservatives across the board, including to the Supreme Court. Former President Trump nominated Justice Gorsuch, got him confirmed, then Justice Kavanaugh, then finally Justice Coney Barrett. This decision today landed like a thunderclap on Capitol Hill and on the American political scene. It changes the dynamics potentially for the midterm elections, bringing this issue, social issues, abortion rights, to the fore of a midterm campaign and discussion that had been primarily focused so far on the economy and on inflation.
And we're showing now the states with trigger laws that would restrict abortions now that Roe versus Wade is overturned. Most of these traditionally red states, as we call them, or conservative states, if you will. Jan, you were talking about, and in many of these states, it will be illegal today, it's already illegal.
It was immediate. That's the way the laws were written. Some states requires a signature. Again, I'm sure we'll see that in some state capitals this afternoon, where there will be fanfare signing it. Then it will take effect later this afternoon.
Right, and that's why when we talked about Michigan, for example, where it's already illegal under this 1931 law, you have the governor, a Democratic governor with a Republican legislature, turning to the courts to have a fight about this. So yesterday you had Vice President Harris meeting with about 7 state attorneys general to talk about finding creative solutions here. They want to look like they're doing something, though as Jan just laid out, there's very little that can be done to actually change this. But at the state level, the Biden administration wants to look like they are encouraging something, and some of these creative lawsuits.
We are just wrapping up our coverage of this historic day here in Washington. And so, Jan, I want to ask you, what does this ruling mean for women in America, for the future of politics in America?
I mean, Roe versus Wade was the few decisions Americans can say by name. That decision is history. And this issue of abortion and abortion rights, what it means is the Supreme Court will not have any say anymore. It's going to be up to your elected representatives in the state where you live live. And that's where the fight is going to be. And the Supreme Court in its majority is saying that's where it always should have been. Roe was wrongly decided from the start.
Do you expect, Margaret, marches across America, that this becomes the top issue in campaigns?
Absolutely. In fact, I was personally surprised in some ways that this was happening on a Friday, going into a weekend where there are warnings of political violence and marches, and not held for Monday, for example, when people are at work. This is something that we will be tracking very closely.
Thank you very much. And this is a historic day because after nearly 50 years, the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade, taking away the constitutional right to an abortion. And with that decision, Roe versus Wade is no longer the law of the land. I'm Norah O'Donnell in Washington. We'll have more tonight on the CBS Evening News.
keep deadly weapons out of dangerous hands by encouraging states to establish extreme risk protection order laws, ERPO, otherwise known as red flag laws, help put end to straw purchases, close the boyfriend loophole. So many good things are in there. And it's not everything that we want. And we must keep moving toward background checks, but universal background checks, which will save the most lives. But this will save lives. And to listen to Lucy McGrath and other family members of those who have lost their loved ones, this is a giant step forward. Maybe not so much a giant, but a strong step forward. And if it's good enough for them, then we rejoice in passing it. As I say to members all the time with legislation, do not judge it for what isn't in it, but respect it for what is. And there's much to be respected in this legislation. On a happier note, yesterday we celebrated 50 years of Title IX, which has transformed equality and opportunity in our country. Are you familiar with the words of Title IX? Yesterday we had Billie Jean King here once again celebrating Title IX, unveiling a portrait of Patsy Mink, who is the author in the House, working with Birch Bayh in the Senate to make this the law of the land. And this is what it says. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Again, in honor of this anniversary, we unveiled a portrait which will hang in the halls. It's about our she's actually the first woman of color to serve in the Congress. So she's honored for her first, but also for what she accomplished. We already have painting of Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman, and for her many accomplishments here. And of course, Jeanette Rankin, the first woman ever to serve in the Congress. That's our first series. So again, we're working on the Competes Act and lowering cost, and the Competes Act is part of that. Lower families' cost, energize manufacturing, and strengthen America's competitiveness now and in the future. I think we seem to be able to find our areas of agreement where we have some negotiating to do and some things that we may have to save for another day. The real question is, do the Republicans in the Senate really want America to be independent? Do they really want to bring back jobs, to make it in America and allocate the resources to make sure that happens, especially with chips, which are so important to our manufacturing in our own country. So that is very important. Competes is a pillar of our work to lower costs, but we're proud of other steps we have taken, lowering gas prices by cracking down on big oil's price gouging and the Consumer Fuel Price Gouging Prevention Act, lowering food costs and taking further action to lower gas costs with the Lower Food and Fuel Cost Act, lowers fertilizer costs for farmers, reduces meat and poultry prices for families by increasing competition there, and lowers costs at the pump with cheaper, cleaner American unleaded 88. I'm very proud of the work of our members who are so responsible for this, and lowering the cost of everyday goods by passing the Open Shipping Reform Act. And every one of these categories where we have taken action, corporate America, and I don't paint them all with the same brush, but corporate America, some, have been there to exploit the consumer. Their business plan is to increase profits at the expense of the consumer. And that is part of what is contributing to inflation. Inflation is global now, but some of it is exacerbated by this. And if you see the profits from the shipping industry, and again, the supply chain issues are related to shipping issues. So again, we're very proud of the work that we've done. We believe that some of it has a prospect in the Senate.
Coverage of the big breaking news from Washington, D.C. Roe falls. The U.S. Supreme Court eliminates the constitutional right to have an abortion. In a 6-3 ruling, the court has overturned 50 years of precedent. At this hour, almost half of the states, including Ohio, are expected to outlaw or restrict abortion. What you see on your screen is what's happening. Major focus in Washington, D.C. The entire nation at this hour reacting to the news. Though we have known this day would come for weeks now, you see in Washington, D.C., large crowds have gathered outside the Supreme Court. Security there is tight. You see the view there, Washington, D.C., the state capitol here. People from both sides of this issue are reacting to this monumental ruling. We are also watching our own state capitol here in Columbus, downtown. There will be a rally there at 1 o'clock, so in about a couple of hours. Lots of reaction happening to this. We want to get to the Speaker of the House in Washington, D.C., Nancy Pelosi, taking some questions right now about this ruling.
Million potentially exposed veterans, exposed to the burn pits, exposed to bad poisonous water at Camp Lejeune. It grants presumptions of exposure for veterans with rare cancers and other debilitating diseases, and it includes, as I say, the Camp Lejeune. The cancer piece of it is addressed in the Advanced Research Projects Agency Health Act, ARPA-H, Congresswoman Eshu's legislation. The PACT Act is Mr. Takano, the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. ARPA-H comes out of the Energy and Commerce Committee, this particular legislation, Congresswoman Eshu's, and that is accelerates the fight against cancer, supercharges the cancer moonshot, and again, a number of mental health bills this week and more to come that address mental health concerns that we have for our veterans, for our children, for our entire community. And again, some of that legislation relates to the opioid challenge that we face. So we pass legislation keeping the president's promise, and hopefully we can get some of this through the Senate. But I am personally overwhelmed by this decision. From time to time, I quote this poem by Ehud Manor. He's an Israeli poet. I met his wife when I've been in Israel. He says, "I have no other country, even though my land is burning. Only a word in Hebrew penetrates my veins, my soul, with an aching body and with a hungry heart. Here is my home. I will not be silent, for my country has changed her face. My country has changed her face. I shall not give up on her. I shall remind her and sing into her ears until she opens her eyes." Clearly, we hope that the Supreme Court would open its eyes. But to see the Chief Justice side with this radical agenda, it's just stunning. And again, as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother, to see young girls now have fewer rights than their moms or even their grandmothers is something very sad for our country. I only have time for like one or two questions. Chad and then Jacob. Yeah.
You talked about the exercise by Leader McConnell on the Merrick Garland nomination, and then what happened with the 3 President Trump decisions here. We have a member of your caucus who's saying we don't care what the far-right extremist court does. I mean, even though you don't like the process to get these justices onto the court, which resulted in this decision, do you respect the process and what they've come out with, even though you vehemently disagree?
I'm about truth and honesty. Mitch McConnell said when Justice Scalia passed away in the early month, was it February, the beginning of February, the end of January, that we didn't have enough time in an election year to confirm a justice. And so Merrick Garland was not even given a hearing with 11 months to go. And yet, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, before the word was out that she had died, he had already said, we're setting up hearings, when it was only weeks until the election. The inconsistency, the hypocrisy, I don't respect that process, A. B, that some of these justices who came before the Senate said they respected precedent and privacy. They must have a different view of precedent from what their vote was today. on Roe v. Wade. No, I don't respect a process that criminalizes a woman's right to her reproductive freedom. Jake?
Do you have any plans for action in the House? I know you've already taken action.
Yes.
Is there something that you do further?
We have passed that legislation really in order to make it the law of the land. It is clear that we just have to win a majority in November. And everything is at stake. If you're a woman, if you care about women, if you respect women, you know that this is a disgraceful, disgraceful judgment that they made. So, needless to say, and I quote Lincoln all the time, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But in order for public sentiment to prevail, people have to know. And people do know.
There are probably millions of Americans out there who are angered, saddened by this decision, who feel very helpless, like that they can't do anything about it. What's your advice to them about what they should be doing?
Well, I think that, again, it's always about the outside mobilization is the most important part of any success that we can have on an issue. I say this all the time. Every week I have a big mobilization, a Zoom, and I say, you are our VIPs, our volunteers in policy, our volunteers in politics. Inside maneuvering can only take you so far. Outside mobilization makes all the difference in the world. So I do think that women have to know, and those who care about women have to know that their voice, to know their power, to know the power of mobilization, to make their voices heard to their elected officials. Nothing is more eloquent to a member of Congress than the voice of his or her own constituents. And so they have to make their voices heard. But there is a plan, and that plan is to win the election, hopefully to get 2 more senators so that we can change the obstacles to passing laws for the good of our country. And one of the most encouraging things for me that happened right after the inauguration of the former occupant, occasionally, of the White House was the day after that inauguration, that horrible speech, horrible speech. The day after the inauguration, women around the country marched. They marched, and it wasn't politically planned. It was organic. People just came forth in large numbers all over the country, and women marched, women ran for office, women voted, and we took back the House. We have to have something commensurate with that. But again, the organic nature of it, that it was spontaneous, that it sprang from community. We have a plan. We have a plan, and we have we have a goal, and we have a plan to achieve it. So they should take advantage of that opportunity, because otherwise you'll have the criminalization. They're talking about trying doctors for murder who terminate a pregnancy, and it might be something that is rape, incest, or anything like that as well. This is extremism to the nth degree. And I think the power of women will be felt very strongly in this. I'm going to have to go to the floor now because this is historic. We're so proud of this legislation. Again, we don't judge it for what it doesn't do, but respect it for what it does. And what it does are good things that can save people's lives. Thank you so much.
Speaker, is a fetus a human being? I'm gonna tweet something. I was just like, should I that's when they knew it was that. Yeah. Usually she makes a contempt effort to be like, oh, there's women ahead.
All right, so what you just saw there was Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, commenting on this ruling from the Supreme Court. We have on the screen now some other voices from some other voices from Congress as they are weighing in on this. Congressman Tim Ryan, who, as you know, is running for Senate, says the Supreme Court just overturned Roe v. Wade in the largest case of government overreach in my lifetime. This ruling greenlights extreme proposals in Ohio that could jail doctors and deny women access to life-saving care. The only way forward is to expand our pro-choice majority. Again, there is reaction coming in via social media. And so that's what we are showing you here, having heard from Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, on this. Also, 3rd District Congresswoman Joyce Beatty joining Ryan in condemning the ruling, saying the will of the American people has been overturned. So that is from a tweet that we saw from Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. Republican Senator Rob Portman says while abortion is sensitive and emotional issue, I think most Americans agree that life is precious and should be protected. Portman went on to suggest lawmakers work together to provide support for pregnant women. Now we also have from Congressman Jim Jordan, who simply said life wins. We will continue to gather information from your representatives to the House of Representatives and to the Senate from Washington, D.C. as they weigh in on, again, this historic ruling that has come in from the U.S. Supreme Court. I want to show this to you. The ruling comes from a case in Mississippi where that state's law banned nearly all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. This is where the 213-page opinion says it. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. That is what the Constitution and the rule of law demand. If this landmark decision were overturned, House Bill 598 has already been introduced. It was introduced here in our state by Representative Gene Schmidt. It would penalize doctors who perform abortions. It's called the trigger law, and the ban is triggered by a court decision or constitutional amendment to ban abortion. The bill would make it a 4th-degree felony if doctors were to perform medication or surgical abortions. There is no exception for rape or incest. Doctors could defend themselves against a criminal charge only if the abortion was performed to save the mother's life. And physicians would need to follow certain steps, including specific documentation. Senate Bill 123 was also introduced last September with similar language. Both pieces of legislation have been introduced but did not make it far in the committee hearings. Now, if we could just bring it back to me here on the set, I want to show the viewers at home this decision, 213 pages. We are here poring over this as we bring this breaking news to you, but this is the decision from the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, Ohio is one of the 22 states that have these laws that can be used to restrict the legal status of abortion, and that's according to the Guttmacher Institute, which is a nonprofit that researches reproductive rights worldwide. Of those 13 states, Ohio, included in that number, have these trigger laws that would ban all or nearly all abortions if Roe is overturned. And of course, that's why we're here now on the air, because it has been. 9 additional states are considered certain to ban abortions based on laws passed before and after Roe in the event that it's overturned. The nonprofit also identified 4 states that are likely to ban based on their political makeup, history, and recent actions limiting abortion. There are also several states that have laws dedicated to the protection of abortion rights. You see those on your screen. 4 states and the District of Columbia offer full protection without state interference throughout the entire pregnancy. An additional 12 states permit abortion prior to viability or when necessary to protect the life or health of the pregnant person. Historically, abortions in Ohio have trended downward. We have this to show you. In the decade following the Roe v. Wade ruling, numbers spiked at more than 45,000 abortions in 1982. However, in the last decade, there have been, on average, around 20,000 abortions each year. We do not yet have the numbers for 2021. That data will be released in October, so some time there. But the state health department says that there were 19,438 abortions performed in Ohio in the year 2020. Some polling here. ABC News and the Washington Post conducted a poll about abortion a week before the leak of that draft opinion. In that poll, 54% of Americans supported upholding Roe, 28% supported overturning it. The remaining 18% had no opinion. Now, when it comes to the decision about whether a woman can get an abortion, 70% of Americans said that decision should be left to a woman and her doctor. 24% said it should be regulated by law. So again, we have this breaking news that has come into our newsroom, and of course the networks. We will be covering this all day today. You can also follow us at 10tv.com and on the 10TV app. We now return you to our regularly scheduled programming.
Democrats in Congress march today to protect our women, to keep the government out of our bedroom and out of our doctor's office. We trust women. We will make the decisions that we choose with consent only of our loved ones and only in consultation with our medical providers. We will not go back. We will vote. Mujeres unidas jamás serán vencidas. In this Supreme Court, girls have more rights than women. Shame on them. Today, we voted to protect our children, one step to keep them away from guns. Today, we marched on the Supreme Court because we need to keep the government out of our bedroom, out of our doctor's office. We trust women and we will vote porque las mujeres unidas jamás serán vencidas. We will come out. Latinas, women of color are going to be the most hurt by this. They are killing our women.
Let me also point out the following. This is an extreme Supreme Court. This is a political Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas has already said that contraception, same-sex marriage, LGBT rights, and trans rights should be on the table. This is not the America that is represented by the people who vote. That's why voting in November is so important.
You see this turnout here? You ain't seen nothing yet. Women are going to control their bodies no matter how they try and stop us. The hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them. Women will be in control of their bodies. And if they think black women are intimidated or afraid, they got another thought coming. Black women will be out in droves. We will be out by the thousands. We will be out by the millions. We're going to make sure we fight for the right to control our own bodies. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hello, young girls. We're fighting for you. I beg your pardon? Is abortion on the ballot in November? I don't know what's happening and where they're going with this, but we're going to take every effort and try everything we can to overcome what they have done to us.
at this. Women are not fighting alone. There are men who have wives and daughters. There are men who respect women, and there will be men in this fight with women. This is not over. It's just the genesis of a new beginning. It's not over. It's not over.
We're not going back. But right now we're going back to the Capitol to pass a good legislation again. Our children. We protect our children. We protect our women. That's who we are. We gotta go.
I'm in place. I am, if you can do me a favor and just dial into the IFB. Because, you know, they count me down for the gym. What's it, like 10? I don't even remember. It was 10 off the top and...
Abortion is oppression! Abortion is fascist! Abortion is oppression! Abortion is racist! Abortion is oppression! Abortion is classist! Abortion is oppression! We're gonna dance on the grave! On the grave!
Now I'm about to get cussed out. The other staff go back to the office?
I think that's fair. Abortion is oppression! Abortion is the fucking law! Babies never choose to die! Babies never choose to die! Abortion is the fucking law! Babies never choose to die!
The natural death they have seen. Why don't you protect them in the womb? Why do you think women need to kill their babies, huh? We're not going to stop AOC. We're not going to stop until abortion is outlawed in every single state in this nation. We're not going to stop AOC. We're going to go see what that legislation is in every single state.
what comes next? What's next?
Abortion rights, baby.
from lawmakers.
Well, this is something that Democrats were certainly concerned about this entire time. It's why there were pushes, calls to try to codify Roe v. Wade, not only from those here on Capitol Hill, but also at the White House as well, thinking that something like this could potentially happen. I think it'll be interesting to see sort of what happens moving forward, especially at the state level. You talked about Ohio being impacted, but there are other states across the country that have these trigger laws in place, essentially outlawing abortion almost immediately following this decision. So it'll be interesting to see sort of where states sort of go moving forward. And then you also have to think about those what's referred to as a safe haven state, where abortions will still be possible to a certain extent. What this decision could mean in terms of the impact, the weight, the amount of people trying to make their way to those states to get an abortion, and what that could mean as well. You know, take for example a state like Illinois, where that will be the case. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it'll move forward, what lawmakers plan to do. We know that a group of House lawmakers plan to make their way outside of the Supreme Court today, most of them women in Congress, all saying that they are deeply saddened by the court's opinion and decision today. And so I expect we could see more of that as many House Democrats come out opposed to the court's decision.
Before we let you go, Skylar, you talked about the fencing being up. What else can you tell us? Can you give us a bit of the flavor of the scene there outside the Supreme Court?
Sure. Well, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a police siren going on right now. There has certainly been an increased police presence here today. Something that we saw different today than most days is that typically around the time that the opinions would come out, that's 10 o'clock Eastern time, we would see police sort of gather around the Supreme Court with the expectation that this opinion could drop at any moment. Today, there is certainly an increase of that. There are police on bike, there's fencing up, there's gates separating those who are pro-abortion rights and those who are against it, and so it is very much high energy, a lot of passionate people out here as well, but law enforcement certainly seems to be in place.
All right, Skylar Henry, correspondent for CBS, joining us, as well as Brittany Bailey joining me here in studio. You've been reading through the decision, and you have sort of a nuts and bolts look.
That's right. You know, we talked a little bit about this. This is the day, really, we've been anticipating for roughly 2 months since that leaked opinion. Still, the decision, as we see, is sending shockwaves across the country. As of now, though, a woman's right to an abortion is no longer guaranteed by the Constitution. So this was a 5-4 decision with a majority opinion from Justices Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Now, you'll recall Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett all were nominated by former President Donald Trump. So what does this all mean? So to be clear, it does not mean that abortion is now illegal. It means the decision is now up to each individual state. So far, 13 states have already enacted so-called trigger laws, and they're on the books. They're set to kick in response to today's decision. Now, Ohio is not one of them yet. Right now, abortion in our state is legal up to 20 weeks of pregnancy. Of course, this topic has been one of the most hotly debated in our country's history, with very strong feelings on both sides. But when it comes to how Americans really feel, this is what a recent CBS News YouGov poll showed. 65% believe abortion should be legal in most or all cases, while 35% believe it should be illegal. So this opinion is a lengthy one, more than 200 pages long. The majority did rule that Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, and its reasoning was exceptionally weak. Meanwhile, the liberal justices wrote in a joint dissent that the decision would bring sorrow for the many millions of American women who will be losing a fundamental constitutional protection. And speaking of that, Tracy, a lot of people are now talking about what this ruling could mean for other historic rulings, specifically when it comes to gay marriage and the right to contraception. I want to get to some of what was discussed. So Clarence Thomas wrote a concurring opinion. So he wrote something to support, obviously, the majority opinion. In it, he wrote that the court should reconsider rulings currently protecting the right to contraception, same-sex relationships, and same-sex marriage. So many people are concerned about what that would mean. However, in the majority opinion, if you go, this is technically on page 71 in this very lengthy decision, it says this: We have stated unequivocally that nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. So that is what the majority opinion is saying, despite some of this concern. But I know this is something that legal experts will be combing through throughout the day and trying to determine, but lots to really get through, because obviously it takes a lot to get through this court opinion when it's this long.
And we should point out that this ruling comes from that case in Mississippi where that particular state's law banned nearly all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And this is where this 213-page opinion that we've been looking through says it is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. That is what the Constitution and the rule of law demand. And again, we're getting reaction from our representatives to Congress online to this decision. So we want to show you some of that. Ohio Representative Tim Ryan called it the largest case of government overreach in his lifetime. Remember, Ryan is running for the Senate seat currently held by Rob Portman. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who represents the 3rd District, joining him in condemning the ruling, saying the will of the American people has been overturned. Republican Senator Rob Portman says while abortion is a sensitive and emotional issue, I think most Americans agree that life is precious and should be protected. Again, that is from Senator Rob Portman, who went on to suggest that lawmakers work together to provide support for pregnant women. And Republican Representative Jim Jordan with a very simple tweet you see on your screen: life wins. Now, we also just received a statement from Columbus Public Health, and we want to share that with you. It reads in part, abortion is health care. When we deny women access to safe abortions, we take away the basic health care services they need to live healthy and productive lives. We are posting this particular statement again from Columbus Public Health on 10tv.com and on our 10TV News app. We are going to give you this live look at the Ohio State House right now. A rally is going to be taking place there at about 1 o'clock. All pretty quiet there. You see some people already setting up. Our team will be covering this and monitoring what happens over the next few hours. We do have a running list of comments from Ohio's political leaders at our website and on the app, so you can check that at 10tv.com. We are going to continue our coverage of this breaking news for you right after the break when we start 10 TV News at noon. We now return you to regular programming.
need abortion every day. Abortion. 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 Abort those babies. Abort those babies. Abort those babies. Abort those babies. Pro-choice matters. Pro-choice matters. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Babies never choose to die. Pro-choice, that's a lie. Let's go. Pro-life, let's go.
My body, my choice. My body, my choice, my choice.
Pro-life, let's go.
Knock your fucking car off. Roll out.
Right here.
Can you hold on to this?
Excuse me. Pro-life. Channel 5 locally. Go back to where you came from. wants the right to choose. My 9-year-old. I love you. I love you, baby. My 9-year-old's on FaceTime. She wants the right to choose. I love you, Leah. She wants the right to choose. My 9-year-old's on FaceTime. Say hi to my 9-year-old. Say hi. Aaliyah. Her name's Aaliyah. She's 9. Aaliyah wants the right to choose. Yes. My body, my choice. Get away from me. Why don't you want to have a conversation? Because I don't want to talk to you. Excuse me. You're stepping on my mat.
Come on. You want your 9-year-old to be able to have an abortion?
Abortion rights are human rights.
When do human rights begin?
When the mother chooses, do you know anybody who's been raped?
Yes.
So then, are you going to let the woman live in torment with the baby that she had through a rape?
When do human rights begin?
Why
do humans have rights? Because they're human?
Yes.
No, they're not human yet. Science says they're not human to after 5.5 weeks. Science.
What science are you talking about?
Science.
Yeah, a human egg and a human sperm coming from human parents
a fetus is not
is
alive.
going to produce human offspring.
So what?
Well,
yeah. In about longer than 6 weeks.
Yeah.
5.5 weeks.
Look at the gestation
Only
of a woman.
it's
human.
It's a piece of
They
fleshy
follow
material.
after their kind.
Fleshy material. Can't you
They
understand
follow
that?
after their
So I
kind.
guess if I take out your appendix, I'm
zygote-
choosing murder. Because I could
zygote-
take your appendix
Do you know what a
and
zygote
clone
is?
a human being out
Do you
of
know what
it.
a zygote is?
I know more than you'll ever
Okay,
know.
tell me. What's a zygote?
It's a before.
It's a before what?
It's a before baby, before anything.
What?
It's when the egg turns into a zygote. It's not a human being.
No, yeah,
it's
exactly.
a zygote.
Exactly.
It's a zygote.
If
It's
if you take out your appendix,
is it some other kind of zygote?
doesn't matter.
What do you mean it doesn't
It's not
matter?
a human. It could be anything.
It's not a dog zygote.
So you don't
who
know.
the fuck-
They
it's
look
not a
the
horse
exact same.
zygote.
They look the exact same.
But we're not talking about horses. We're not
We're
talking
not
about
talking about-
dogs.
we're talking
not
about-
talking about dolphins.
A zygote
We're
is a
talking-
zygote.
We're talking about.
Dante, you should take off that mask. Yeah, please. What? I don't feel like getting attacked. Yeah, also, maybe some TikToks. We got dogs, and they were like,
tình khỏe chưa?
Could I give you the number I'm on right now? 'Cause then it's like, again, there's, you know.
Right.